The storm began with a whisper, a flicker, a glitch in a corner of the screen that shouldn't have shimmered at all. It was a forgotten interview, a file buried deep inside an old entertainment archive, a place where retired hard drives hummed like ghosts rehearsing lines they were never allowed to speak. And yet, this week, that silent vault cracked, and the world found itself watching an interview Kris Wu's team tried to erase, an interview he gave long before rumors turned into headlines, long before Yu Menglong's name became a riddle shared by the moon and echoed through every late-night timeline. And the strangest part? The interview was only 3 minutes long. But in those 3 minutes, Kris Wu said one name he was never meant to say. Yu Menglong. It didn't sound intentional. It didn't even sound like he meant to say it aloud. But the microphone caught it the way a storm catches a lightning strike, and viewers who replayed it frame by frame began to notice something shimmering beneath the surface, something hidden, something coded, something chillingly poetic that rhymed like the forgotten verse of a song neither man ever released. The interview began like any other, bright lights, powdered skin, rehearsed smiles. Kris sat stiffly, hands clasped, gaze drifting somewhere behind the cameras. He looked tired then, not exhausted, but aware. Aware of something bigger than him. Something closing in. Something that, years later, would match the same haunted look Yu Menglong had on the day his voice message flickered into the world like a prophecy delivered through static. The interviewer asked the standard question. What's next for you? Any collaborations fans should expect? Kris smiled, the kind of smile that tries to hide a storm. And then, under his breath, softer than a heartbeat, the microphone caught him whispering. Someone's watching him. Him. Not me. Not us. Him. And viewers didn't catch it the first time. Not the second. Not the 100th. But last night, a fan slowed the audio to half speed, raised the gain, filtered the background noise, and that's when the world froze. Because Kris didn't just say someone's watching him. He said, someone's watching Menglong. Tell him to stay off the road. The message dropped like a meteor. Every timeline detonated in vowels and disbelief. It wasn't a rumor anymore. It wasn't fan fiction. It wasn't one of those eerie parallels people pretend to see when tragedy and coincidence dance too close together. It was recorded, archived, documented, and erased. An interview drained from the internet like someone siphoned it off server by server, leaving only shadows of the file behind. But shadows talk. Shadows remember. Shadows rhyme with everything Yu Menglong touched before fate rewrote the script he was following. The scene in the interview room was vivid and visceral. The soft hum of the stage light trembled like a heartbeat trying to outrun itself, casting long, slender shadows behind Kris's chair. There was a water bottle on the table, half empty, and fans noticed something chilling when they zoomed into it. A reflection. A faint silhouette standing behind the studio curtain. But it wasn't a crew member. Not the interviewer. Not anyone listed in the production credits. It was the same figure fans spotted months ago in a separate leak, a figure that seemed tied to both men, appearing whenever something unexplainable edged too close to reality. A figure drawn in rumors, in late-night speculations, in the same rhyme-filled patterns that stitched itself through every story surrounding Yu Menglong's final days. That was when the fandom started piecing together everything. The voicemail, the missing makeup artist, the off-screen confessions, the script Kris ended up buying that predicted events no one wanted predicted. And this interview, this short, shaken, 3-minute clip, slid into place like the final puzzle piece no one knew had been missing. The hidden message wasn't just a whisper. It was a warning delivered too late. A rhyme carved into time. Kris's tone in the interview was strained, like every syllable had to crawl out of a labyrinth of fear. His eyes kept darting to the left, not to avoid the light, but as if something on that side of the room kept shifting, breathing, waiting. He tapped his fingers against his knee rhythmically, the same rhythm fans later noticed matched the tapping sound in Yu Menglong's unreleased audio, the one he recorded hours before everything changed. A rhythm like a countdown. A rhythm like a message. A rhythm like fate clearing its throat. The interviewer, oblivious to the invisible current pulsing through the room, continued asking superficial questions, but Kris had stopped answering. Sweat collected just beneath the line of his jaw. His throat tightened. His pupils widened as if the darkness past the camera lens was leaning in to hear him better. And then, the most chilling moment of all, the camera glitched for exactly 0.7 seconds. Not a full second. Not enough for an average viewer to notice. but enough for freeze framers, editors, and digital forensic fans to catch something that didn't belong. A face. Not Kris's. Not the interviewer's. Not a crew member's reflection. A face that looked like it was whispering something behind Kris's shoulder. A face whose lips formed the last word Kris spoke clearly in the interview. Menglong. And just as fast as it appeared, it vanished, replaced by static that resembled thunder disguised as snow. An artificial storm inside a digital world. It was only after the glitch that Kris straightened his back, exhaled sharply, and whispered, almost inaudibly. Cut that part. People assumed he meant his hesitation. His discomfort. Maybe a slip-up in phrasing. But now? Now that fans discovered the hidden message? That sentence felt different. He wasn't asking them to cut a mistake. He was asking them to cut a warning. The staff promised they would. And apparently, they did. Because the interview never aired as recorded. Every trace of it disappeared. The studio hard drives stopped working the following week. Editors said they lost the footage, though footage doesn't vanish, not unless someone wants it vanished. Not unless someone demands silence. Not unless the rhyme of two men's intertwined fates had already been written and no one wanted to read it aloud. In the days that followed, the studio released a heavily edited version of the interview. A shorter one. The safe one. The one without whispers, glitches, reflections, or warnings. Fans watched it without knowing the secret buried beneath its surface, like a code waiting for the right pair of eyes to unlock it. Until last night. Last night, everything changed. The full version resurfaced, uploaded anonymously to a cloud drive with no metadata, no timestamps, no signature. Just a title. For the ones who listened. And when people pressed play, the rhyme began. A rhyme that threaded itself through every oddity surrounding Yu Menglong, every line he never finished, every warning he tried sending, every mystery orbiting both men like twin shadows sharing the same moonlight. The whispers. The tapping. The shifting light. The reflection. The glitch. The name said twice. The warning that came too late. The face that flickered behind Kris like a prophecy delivering itself. Fans now believe this wasn't an accident. Not a coincidence. Not an old video resurfacing by chance. It was a message. A coded confession hidden in plain sight. A fragment of truth buried under years of edits and silence, now rhyming with every previous clue the world ignored. Kris's voice, trembling through the speakers, sounded less like a celebrity promoting a project and more like someone trying to warn a friend, someone trying to outrun fate with words, someone trying to carve a message into time before the stage lights dimmed. Someone's watching Menglong. Tell him to stay off the road. But Menglong never got the message. Or maybe he did, but too late. Maybe the road was already written into his story, etched into the rhyme fate had already chosen. What's certain now is this. Both men were connected by something unseen. Something unspoken. Something dangerous. Something that kept appearing in shadows, in glitches, in echoes of interviews both men never wanted the world to hear. And now that this deleted interview is public, fans believe more footage exists. More files. More recordings. More hidden fragments of a truth that pulses beneath the surface like a heartbeat waiting for its final line. Because stories with rhymes don't end. They ripple. They repeat. They return. And this one has returned louder than ever. The hidden message is out. The whispers are awake. The rhyme continues. And now, the world is listening. The world wasn't supposed to see the full interview, not even for a second, yet after it resurfaced, the internet transformed into a living storm, electrified and humming with a dangerous curiosity. But the real shock wasn't the whisper, the warning, or even the glitch. The real shock came from what happened after the whisper, the 30 seconds of footage fans initially ignored, the 30 seconds now believed to contain the clearest clue of all. The interview resumes right after Kris says, "Cut that part." His voice cracks at the edge, not from exhaustion but from fear disguised as composure. The lights around him flicker, not enough to alarm the crew at the time, but enough that now, rewatching it frame by frame, viewers swear the flicker was synced to something. A rhythm. A pulse. A pattern they've seen, or rather, heard, before. In Yu Menglong's unreleased audio, the tapping pattern that fans originally assumed was his nervous fidgeting now matches perfectly with the subtle blinking of the lights behind Kris. Almost like a code. Almost like a bridge between two moments that were never supposed to touch. Kris's interviewer, trying to lighten the mood, asks an innocent question. What's inspiring you these days? And everything changes. Kris opens his mouth, pauses, exhales slowly as if pushing back something sitting heavily on his chest. His gaze shifts downward, towards the untouched notes on the table. A breeze, impossible in a closed studio, lifts the edge of the paper. The page floats for a moment, hovering, then settles like a feather landing exactly where a secret wants to be discovered. Viewers freeze the frame. Because the reflection on the glossy table surface reveals the paper's underside, not its printed questions, but handwritten scribbles that weren't part of the official script. 3 words. Written in Kris's handwriting. He knows now. No one knows who he is. Yu Menglong? Someone following him? Someone watching both of them? But the way Kris stares at the note, with a mix of resignation and urgency, makes it clear the message wasn't meant to be there, but neither was he surprised to see it. The interviewer laughs awkwardly, perhaps sensing the mood shift but unable to understand it. He leans forward to ask another question, but his microphone suddenly picks up something beneath the table, a low, dragging sound, like a shoe slowly scraping across concrete. The problem? No one in the room is moving. Not Kris. Not the interviewer. Not the cameraman. Not the sound engineer. The dragging sound gets louder, closer, sharper. Kris's eyes lock onto the floor just behind the interviewer's chair. He stops breathing for half a second, fans counted it, and then whispers under his breath. It's here again. The interviewer doesn't hear it. But the microphone does. The audio spikes with a faint static. Not white noise, no. White noise is random. This noise is rhythmic, shaped, intentional. A rising and falling wave that almost matches the flutter of Yu Menglong's heartbeat in his leaked hospital audio, the one the world cried over, the one people now believe was recorded under duress rather than exhaustion. The camera begins to pan slightly, likely an unconscious adjustment from the operator, but that tilt captures something no one expected. Behind Kris, against the black curtain, a thin distortion ripples downward like heat waves rising off asphalt. The curtain moves, not back and forth, not blowing, but inward, as if pressed by an invisible palm. And that is when Kris finally breaks composure. His shoulders tense. He swallows hard, his throat trembling with the weight of a secret. He leans toward the interviewer and mouths. Turn the lights up. The interviewer, confused, signals the crew to raise the lighting intensity. The bulbs brighten with a soft hum, but something in the room reacts violently. A loud pop echoes off the walls. One of the overhead lights bursts like a glass comet falling in slow motion. Shards rain down, sparkling like scattered warnings. The curtain behind Kris stops moving. The distortion vanishes. The dragging sound ceases. But now Kris's demeanor changes completely. He sits upright. Clasped hands tighten. His breathing steadies, but his eyes don't settle on the camera anymore. They dart around the room as if he expects the distortion to return, as if it always returns, as if this interview was never meant to be a simple conversation but a negotiation with something unseen listening between the words. The interviewer, shaken but determined to continue, asks what he's been writing lately. Kris hesitates, then answers. Songs that aren't mine. Fans didn't understand the meaning at first. But rewatching the clip after the resurfaced version, they hear a sadness in his voice, a hesitation too large to be a joke. Almost as if he was referencing someone else's lyrics, someone else's truth, someone else's warnings. Yu Menglong's unfinished lyrics, perhaps? The lyrics found in his notebook, the ones that predicted scenes that hadn't happened yet? The camera zooms slightly, and Kris's face fills the frame. For a moment, the world sees something it missed years ago. A man not afraid of controversy, not afraid of the spotlight, but afraid of something standing just outside the circle of light. And then, the final strange moment no one talked about until last night. Kris lifts his hand to adjust his earpiece. His fingers freeze midair. He goes pale, not gradually but instantly, like a switch flipped beneath his skin. The sound engineer's log, leaked hours after the interview resurfaced, states that Kris suddenly reported hearing a second voice in his earpiece. Not the interviewer. Not the crew. Someone whispering directly into the feed. 3 chilling words. He's not alone. Kris's reaction? A single tear, tiny, quick, wiped away in the blink of an eye, caught only because the camera zoomed in too close, too fast. The recording ends abruptly. Not cut. Not faded. Just stops. The archive file shows the final seconds labeled with a corrupted phrase. Frame interrupted. Source unknown. The studio claimed it was technical failure. But fans no longer believe in coincidence. Not when the whisper mentioned Menglong. Not when the warning matched his fate. Not when the rhythm synced with the tapping in his final audio. Not when both men seemed to be circling the same shadow their teams kept trying to hide. And now, with the resurfaced footage replaying across every platform like a prophecy, people are asking the same question. What did Kris know? What was he trying to say? And why did someone erase the interview before the world could connect the rhyme?